everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my April wrap-up. Doing this very late, but better late than never, I guess. I have gotten into a really bad habit of doing my monthly wrap-ups late, and they just keep getting later and later. But let's just get into it. So in April, I had another pretty prolific reading month for me. I read 14 books, and I still had a mix of fantasy and contemporary romance, but this month I had it leaned more towards fantasy, especially cozy fantasy, which I am really happy about. I have definitely been enjoying my journey into reading contemporary romance, but fantasy is, my bread and butter. So I am happy to have been reading more fantasy again in April. Of the 14 books that I read, 11 of them were audiobooks and only 3 were physical reads. So I am still really emphasizing the audiobooks, and I have not been physically reading as much, which was one of the things I've been wanting to do. One of my plans for the second quarter of the year is do more physical reading. Did not particularly happen in April, but that's okay. We've got the whole rest of the year. I did also read one other book from my TBR clear out project, so I'm glad to be making a little bit of progress on that. And overall, this month I feel like I had some really high ratings. Part of that is because I did have quite a number of rereads, but my average rating was 4.1, which for me is pretty high. I don't usually get 4 stars or above as an average. So that's a pretty high average rating for me. But let's just dive into the books themselves. I think this time, again, I'm going to split them into talking about all of the fantasy books that I read first, and then getting into all of the romances. And there is one that kind of bridges the gap this time that is kind of a fantasy romance. So we'll just do it kind of categorically. Starting with my physical reads, one of my rereads for the month was rereading Dreamer's Pool by Juliet Marillier, the first book in the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy, which is in the same world as the Seven Water series, but they're not connected, so you don't have to read one series before the other. But I realized that it has been maybe 6 years since I have reread this series, so it is about time. And also, this series to me always feels like spring. This feels very springy for some reason. So it just felt like the right time to give this series a reread. And in this, we are following our titular characters of Blackthorn and Grimm. At the beginning of this first book, they are both in prison, essentially awaiting execution, and right before Blackthorn is brought to the executioner, a mysterious fae man shows up and offers her a deal that if she follows his rules for 7 years, he will free her from this prison and save her life. And she kind of takes the deal because she doesn't have any other options. And in the process of breaking her out of prison, Grimm is also makes his way out, and the two of them kind of become unlikely companions, and over the course of the series deepen their friendship. And so we're following them as they follow some of the rules that this deal has set out for them, which includes living in a specific location for 7 years, not seeking revenge for what was done to Blackthorn, and offering help to anyone who asks her for it, which is really the thing that rubs her the wrong way, because Blackthorn, while she may be a healer by trade, she is very prickly, and she doesn't like people. She just wants to be left alone. And so that is the thing that is kind of the hardest for her. Well, that's not true. It's very hard for her to not seek revenge as well. It's a tough pill to swallow for her to take this deal, but as I said, really doesn't have any other options. So we follow them as they travel to this new location, kind of set up shop, integrate into the community, and discover some mysteries along the way that they help the locals to solve. And all of these mysteries are always very intertwined with local folklore. And I adored rereading this. This is such a good series. I enjoy Blackthorn so much, especially because like I love a healer, but also I like that she's kind of an unusual healer character. She's not the usual healer archetype who's like so nurturing and like I just want to help people. Like she is prickly, she is abrasive, she is like just leave me alone, but also she has to help people. And I just enjoy that about her. I love their friendship and how these two people have suffered so much. They have gone through such traumatic experiences, and the two of them really they understand each other in a way that like nobody else can. And yeah, I just had a great time rereading this, gave it 5 stars. My other physical reads, I actually had another reread, which was Morgan Is My Name by Sophie Keach. And then, so this was a reread, and then I read for the first time Le Fay, which is the second book in the trilogy. So Morgan Is My Name, or the whole Morgan Le Fay trilogy, is obviously an Arthurian retelling told from the perspective of Morgan Le Fay, and we're following her from childhood through her entire life through adulthood. So in this we start with her like as a child, as some tragedies befall her family, as her mother is forced into a marriage with Uther Pendragon, and then the ways that Uther's control kind of comes down on Morgan, as Morgan is this very like headstrong and independently minded and very like smart and clever and scholarly kid, and then into young woman, which does not agree with Uther, and so the two of them butt heads, but she has this like strong will to move, to like just continue on. Another character who I enjoy because she is kind of a healer, she is a very scholarly person, and she is fascinated by healing, and that is something that she studies like the practical side of it, but then she is also starting to get to know some burgeoning magical abilities in this as well. There is also a bit of a romance in this with kind of a star-crossed lovers with a knight, which is very fun. And so the second book I was reading for the first time, and I think that I enjoyed this, but not as much as the first book. Like I think I gave the first book 4.5 stars, second book 4 stars, both great, but my opinion of this one also might just be kind of colored by the fact that in this book we get to a point where you just know that things are gonna go downhill, right? Morgan Le Fay is ultimately a fairly tragic character, I think, and this is a series that is truly full of like feminine rage, of this woman who, you know, she's not, at the beginning at least, she's not trying to do anything crazy, but because of the times that she lives in, the social conventions, the powers that be, the ways in which men control everything, including her life, her body, her ability to, you know, study or not. It just, like, this is a series that just is like infuriating to read, but in a good way, because it's like, it's infuriating because it's well read, or written, because, you know, you care about this character and you are so invested in her perspective. But this second book, I kind of slowed down on reading it because I was like, I know that things are gonna start going wrong and I don't want to read that. But overall, really enjoyed both of these, and I'm excited to get to the third and final book in the series, which just recently came out. Now we're on to my cozy fantasy audiobook listening for the month. I have quite a few of these. So first up is, I actually have 2 T. Kingfisher books, and T. Kingfisher can be a little hit or miss for me, and so I don't always read her books right away, but I have enjoyed some of them. And so I decided to pick up Hemlock and Silver, which is a a kind of a Snow White retelling, but it's told from the perspective of this woman who is a poisoner, or someone who studies poisons. So she's also kind of healer adjacent. She's not really exactly a healer, because like if you're poisoned, like she's got you. She can help you with poisons. Any other ailment, she does not know what to do. But she is such a fun character because she is so like scholarly about it. She's so fascinated by poisoning, and another kind of interesting healer character in that she's also not coming at it from this like, I just want to help people kind of perspective. She's coming at this from this very cerebral, like, I want to figure this out. I want to solve this puzzle. I want to just know things. And if people get helped in the process, that's cool. Great, but that's not the goal. And so I just enjoy these kind of like unconventional healer characters. But the way this kicks off is that the king shows up at her home and says that he wants her to come and try and help his daughter. His daughter Snow has been ill for a long time. He's consulted like every other kind of healer. No one's been able to help her. And so he's like, you know, last resort, I'm gonna try this random person obsessed with poisons and see if maybe she's being poisoned. And since he's the king, she can't really say no, so she goes with him and starts investigating, you know, the princess's routines, her environment, and in the process discovers some very strange magic. There's some weird magic that happens in this. And this one was so much fun. As I said, I loved the main character. I found her just like really endearing, a type of character that I just really enjoy, is this sort of unconventional healer type of character. There is also a little bit of a romance in this that is taking place kind of in the background, which I enjoy. I really like the love interest, and also how much he just genuinely appreciates her for who she is, and like how, you know, sharp her mind is, which I loved about the two of them together. And this one I just had so much fun with. It was like weird and a little bit creepy, in like a really fun way that like when a T. Kingfisher book works for me, I love the little bit of weirdness, the little bit of darkness that her books have, and this one definitely worked. I gave it 4 stars. Then after that I was like, well, maybe I should do more T. Kingfisher books. So I read A Sorceress Comes to Call, which this one is, I think, kind of loosely a Goose Girl retelling, but it is about a little girl whose mother is kind of an evil sorceress, and how this girl gets kind of swept up in her mother's scheme to snag a rich husband to secure their lives. But her mother is also quite abusive towards her and uses magic to control her daughter. And so our main character ends up kind of being pulled into this scheme, but also along the way may see this as her opportunity to get out. And this one just didn't work as well for me, and it's not one that I even have like a really specific reason for. It's just, you know, like the first half I was pretty into it, I was enjoying it. About 60% of the way in, I just kind of lost interest, and I don't know why. Like, this is not one that I have really clear reasons where I'm like, well, I don't like this and I think this was a weird choice or anything like that. I just kind of lost steam on it. And that's about it. So I think I gave this one 3.5 stars. Like, it was still fine, and, you know, losing interest is probably a me problem. I also listened to The Faraway Inn by Sarah Beth Durst, which is a YA contemporary cozy fantasy standalone. That was a lot of descriptors all at once. But in this, our main character is a high school student. She's on her summer break. She just recently had a bad breakup with her ex-boyfriend, and so she wants something to get her out of town. And so she is going to visit her great aunt, who she has not seen since she was a child, and visit her aunt's inn for the summer, but when she gets there, her aunt is like, why are you here? Get out of here. And so our main character spends quite a bit of time trying to essentially prove her usefulness so that she can stay, because she really does not want to go home and have to like see her ex and all of that. But as she is settling in, getting to know more about the inn, getting to know the people who are staying there and the people who work there, things get weirder and weirder until she realizes that the inn is magical, and the people who stay there are from other magical portal worlds. And it just is such a fun story. I found all of the characters in this really endearing. You know, it's one of those like just kind of ensemble cast with eccentric characters. The inn itself has its own like personality to it, and I just thought it was so much fun. It actually reminded me in some ways of like the Wayward Children series by Sean McGuire, because that series is all about doors that lead to magical portal world. I would say it's like more cozy than the Wayward Children series. That series also has like always has a little bit of like a dark edge to it, and this one definitely doesn't have that feeling. It is just cozy, but if you like the Wayward Children series and those like portal doors, you might enjoy this, as it's almost like a location from that. Oh, and I gave this one 4 stars. And then my last 2 fantasies were because I finally remembered that I was supposed to be doing a chronological reread of the Penric and Desdemona series by Lois McMaster Bujold. I had been working my way through chronologically rereading the series last year. I didn't quite finish the series, and I guess I just sort of forgot I was doing that, but I finally remembered because I'm almost at the end. So I reread 2 more books in that series, or novellas in that series, which were Knot of Shadows and Demon Daughter. So this series is set in her world of the 5 gods, and as the name might imply, there are 5 gods in this world. It is a very like theologically heavy series. Not heavy in that it's complex, but it is, the theology of this world is just integrated into every aspect of this series. We're following Penric, who is a temple divine, which means that he also has a demon living in his head with him, because that is how you get magical powers in this world, is that you share your body with a demon. And he has named his demon Desdemona. And Desdemona is like an amalgamation of every other sorcerer that she has lived with, which up until this point have all been women. And so he has like 10 old ladies like living in his head, like giving him advice, and he is just this like very unassuming scholarly guy who is now suddenly the most powerful sorcerer probably in the world. And this series is very episodic, and it just follows the 2 of them as they go on adventures, as they solve mysteries. The vibe of this series is very much like a kind of episodic, like cozy mystery series, but make it like fantasy and like very like theologically focused, because Penric loves talking about the theology of this world. And so it's just like a very cozy series, and some of the books in the series are a little slow, you know, and you're just kind of in it because you like the vibes and the characters, and then some of them have like a more cohesive plot to them. These 2 I really enjoyed. I think that they had more clear plots to them. Knot of Shadows is quite sad because it does involve the death of a child, so content warning for that. But overall, just really enjoy this series, and I'm glad that I'm kind of continuing on with this chronological reread. Oh, and I gave both of these 4 stars. So those were my fantasy reads. Now I have a bridge book, which is my fantasy romance, which was The Entanglement of Rival Wizards by Sarah Roche. This I kind of just read on a whim because the second book in the series comes out in May, and for some reason that book looked interesting to me, and I don't remember why, but I was like, I'll just, you know, I'll read the first one. I could get the audiobook from my library, so why not? And I ended up loving this. I was so like taken by surprise by this book. It was so much fun. This is about two like academic rivals in grad school in like a fantasy version of our world. You know, it's like the modern day. There are cars. They even reference like, you know, someone that they know went to DC and stuff like that. So it's in like the modern world, but there's magic, and there are like Dungeons and Dragons, like races and magic in it. And so like one time the main character has to like get to campus, but there's traffic because like a troll attacked the road and they're waiting for an adventuring party to come clear it away, and like all of this. It is so fun. And so the main characters are academic rivals. They are both trying to get this prestigious like grant for their graduate study research, and then they are forced to work together and share this award. And so it forces them together. Of course it turns into a romance. This is actually a rare like rivals to lovers romance that truly works for me. That's not a trope I particularly like, but this time it worked so well. I loved these characters so much, and I also think what worked for me is that the rivalry was about something that was at the right level. Like it had the right level of stakes to feel genuine, but not a level of stakes that felt insurmountable. And also some of the rivalry was based on assumptions and misunderstandings, and like as they get to know each other they can kind of peel back those layers, and so it doesn't feel like, oh, they've done something that like they can't come back from and now I can't be on board with this romance, you know? It's like, oh, they just didn't really get each other, but as they understand each other more, like this makes sense. Anyways, I enjoyed their relationship and these characters a lot, and this world was so fun. It reminded me a lot of like, if you watch Dimension 20, Fantasy High, very similar, like the setting vibes where it's kind of like modern day-ish, but also like D&D fantasy, and it just is so fun. I don't know how else to describe it. I also will say it's not that there aren't some heavier topics in this, because one of our main characters actually is dealing with trauma from his past, from essentially like a youth military camp that he went to when he was a child, and some trauma surrounding that. And so there are some heavier topics like in it, but overall I adored this. I'm so excited for the second book, and this one really just came out of nowhere and I had such a fun time. I gave this 4.5 stars, although honestly I wonder if I should have just given it 5 stars because I just adored it. And then finally on to our just straight up contemporary romance. I read the Him series by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. So the first book is Him, the second book is Us, and the third like novella is Epic, which I just find the title, I wish it had a more complex title than just Him. I don't like that, but whatever. I enjoyed this series overall. This is another like male gay hockey romance, and I had seen it recommended for people who enjoyed heated rivalry, and I think that that is a very good recommendation. I really think like if you liked heated rivalry and like the Game Changer series and you want something that feels kind of similar, this is a great series. And in some ways I enjoyed some of this series maybe more than heated rivalry. I don't know if more than like all of Game Changer, because heated rivalry was actually not my favorite. Like I loved it, but it was not my favorite within the whole like Game Changer series. Anyways, in Him, this is why I don't like the title. In Him, our two main characters prior to the start of the book, they had been like best friends. They went to this like hockey summer camp together. They had long running like inside jokes together. And then something happened between them. There's like an incident between them, which they have not spoken since. It has now been a few years. They both went to college. They have not like spoken to each other. They run into each other again because their hockey teams are going to play against each other, and that kind of like reignites their friendship, and they end up back at this hockey camp together now as counselors, and so they, you know, go with the intention to become friends again, and then of course become more than friends. And I think that one of the things that for me worked better in this than something like heated rivalry is just the trope that like this is friends to lovers, which I love. I love a friends to lovers romance, and as we know, rivals to lovers, not really my jam. So I think trope wise, this was just much more up my alley, and I just had such a good time with this series, and yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anybody who likes heated rivalry or game changer. I gave the first book, Him, 4.5 stars, the second book, Us, 4 stars, and the novella epic, also 4 stars. And then my last book is Top Secret, also by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. So I picked this up just because I had enjoyed the Him series. So this is another like romance, but this is set in college in like a frat house where there are these two guys who this also is rivals to lovers, which not my fave, but the two of them like live down the hall from each other. They really just have opposing personalities. They don't get along well with each other. One of them comes from a very like privileged background. One of them does not. And then they are going to go head to head to campaigning to become the president of the fraternity. But the kind of impetus for the plot in this is that the more like privileged guy, his longtime girlfriend suggests that they have a threesome, and so he goes to a dating app to find a potential candidate to join them. Discovers someone who, you know, nobody on this app like uses their real name or puts their face, and so the two of them start talking and flirting, and maybe he's discovering some more things about himself, all while not knowing that the person he is talking to and maybe falling for is his rival that he hates, who lives down the hall from him. And so this is a book that, like, that setup, I think for a lot of people will be excellent. And like overall, I thought it was pretty good. This one just didn't like land for me as well as the Him series. And I think it just maybe didn't have like tropes that I was as invested in. And so I gave this one 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written, but it just like, I wasn't as into it as some of the other things that I read. But that is everything that I read in April. I would love to know if you have read any of these or how your April reading was, even though we're pretty far into May at this point, but please talk to me about it in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!